is Troy, artist and resident at Australian Tapestry Workshop, till the end of September. And today I have all my work kind of divided up into exhibitions since art school. So I think it's an easy way to digest bodies of work I've worked over the years. How I started out in art was fresh out of high school. I went to art school in Toowoomba. I grew up in Toowoomba, Queensland, which is an hour and a half west of Brisbane. And I did first year, flunked out, went overseas, studied fashion design, flunked out, and then went back to art school and kind of moved to Hobart to go from second year through to honours. So, starting at the beginning, it was University of Tasmania, Hobart School of Art, and this is my work from third year in 2004, where I was making lots of little beaded soft sculpture. I was kind of buying knickknacks from op shops and things and just kind of re-rendering them in like hand sewn beads. There's a bit of a close up here. So the art school there is quite close to the museum, and I was diving through tip shops and op shops and things. So I was kind of having this interest in objects that are in museums, objects that are in op shops, and this kind of idea of sentimentality and preciousness and things like that. So this idea of this museum case as a kind of anthropological collection of things is kind of an idea, I suppose, that is still travelling through my work now. I was interested in kind of bits of detritus and things. This is a little half a mouse that the cat left. There's some insects and old bones, and I was interested in taking things that are kind of yucky and discarded and then turning them into fine jewels. So this next work kind of iterates that idea, and this is a rack that was found in the art school. The art school had really good heating, underfloor heating, and this rack just kind of dried out like leather, like cardboard almost. Before I was aware of Julia DeVilla, she does this kind of stuff much better than I ever did, but that idea of something kind of discarded or icky being turned in, with Swarovski crystals and being turned into, a treasure worthy of a museum. In the same vein, in the same body of work, so this is honours work, which is the following year. So beading, I was really into beading, and this is it's a kind of 2.5 metre high vine, which is all hand sewn beads. So it's this idea of kind of this labour-intensive, repetitive process of just constantly touching the work and sewing each bead on as this kind of sentimental relationship with the process and with the object. Trying to make it special through this relationship the artist has with their own making. There's a kind of miniature version of the other work. So these are artificial plants that are then beaded and glittered and turned into even more artificial kind of sentimental objects. These works you can see on the far right, this works was exhibited as a pair. And there was more cabinets, beaded birds. So it's this kind of re-rendering of things I'd seen in the museum in a kind of a handmade beaded treasure, like an anthropological artifact or something. The more taxidermy, having done the rat and mouse, I definitely wanted to kind of work with taxidermy, it being such an important part of the museum culture, and I was able to source through in Launceston there's a museum, a a taxidermy department associated with their museum. And I was able to get, so this cat, it's an ethically, there's a guy who works for national parks who kills feral cats. Each week he comes home with a whole truckload, and I was able to take one of those and have it preserved by the museum to then work into this cabinet. And the Rosella was an ex-museum Rosella that had kind of started to fall apart. So I was able to kind of save these things, I suppose, from the bin or the grave in terms of the cat, and preserve them as kind of museum objects. So honours was 2005, and I took a few years off and moved to Sydney and worked a normal job. And I ended up going back to art school, doing a master's at the University of Sydney. It's at Sydney College of the Arts in Roselle, if anyone knows. And this work was actually a work I kind of started in honours, but it didn't make my final body of work, and then I was able to kind of finish it at the beginning of the master's. But I think that I wanted to move on. This is from eBay, so like this idea of sourcing animals, from the discarded from the museum or off eBay. These kind of, it's not kind of custom taxidermy that gets commissioned, I suppose. It's these awkward objects that are already kind of iffy. I don't know. But I made a big shift in the masters in terms of not working with real animals, because I think there's still this ethical territory about, it's still an animal that people still can't just see past that. Oh, it's a real animal, even if it's a feral cat that was killed by national parks, or a squirrel that was taxidermist. People always kind of blamed me for the animal's death by being an artist, and it's not something I wanted to be associated with at all. So I made this shift to try and render, purely artificial work, almost like fake taxidermy is a term I've used in my work. So instead of beads, I kind of went to pom-poms, and instead of real animals, I just was using the taxidermy forms and bits and pieces. So the interior mannequin that taxidermists use. And I suppose it's not much of a leap to see from the beads to the pom-poms. It's just really scaling up the same idea. But I was really interested in this idea of how kind of animals are kind of fetish within the museum as these kind of art objects or aesthetic experiences. My master's was called the Aesthetics of Natural History, and it was very much about kind of the vitrine and the history of taxidermy and those kind of dioramas that you get in kind of old Victorian era museums.
Do you make the pom-poms yourself?
So the pom-poms are called chenille pom-poms, so they're machine made. And when I first started, it was I was just buying them from kind of Lincraft and Spotlight and stuff like that. But once I started making such a big scale, making lots of work, I got a relationship with a factory in Taiwan and kind of told them what colours I wanted, how many I wanted, and started ordering bulk. Which helped. In Spotlight you can only get 12 colours, and now I've got 42 colours of pom-poms I want to use. So, there's a big leap. This is my kind of grad show setup for the end of the Masters, where I was, the mega plinth is kind of imitating the diorama of all the animals together, and how in the museum you'll have two different biomes next to each other. You'll say the polar bear will be next to the grizzly bear, which is an experience you can only really experience in a zoo, in an artificial environment like a zoo or a museum. So after Masters, I had an exhibition in Brisbane where Metro Arts is a kind of RE funded space, and I started to work with pom-poms. Kind of led me into this, the world of like haberdashery and things like that, and the stores like Spotlight and then craft. And having studied fashion, although it didn't really work out in terms of becoming a fashion designer, it definitely was a source of inspiration for new materials and the kind of feelings those materials have, and these kind of decorative objects, interested in how animals kind of decorate people's living spaces and trying to play on that idea of decoration. These tassels, they're like long rings of tassels that get, I kind of pin and glue them over the taxidermy form. There was a whole series. I did 12 works in this kind of rainbow tassels. But this idea of this pelt, again, it kind of works in the same vein as the pom-poms. And this idea of taxidermy is being able to, I'm stretching a pelt over this form, which is the kind of process that taxidermy is. It's a foam mannequin where the skin of the animal is stretched over and pinned and glued in place. The foam forms come in bits and pieces, so a separate head and separate arms and legs, and you can easily cut and shape them and shift them, or use them as is. And you can shop from a catalogue, I suppose, which I found really interesting, of just any animal you can think of in any pose. And so when planning my work, it really starts with what bits and pieces can I get, because it's all from the US, where taxidermy is much more hobby than it is here. And there's big kind of stores that service the kind of hobby taxidermy industry. At this point, I'm just going to jump to a little video. I was on a show, I don't know if you remember, it was a cancelled show called Art Nation, which was ABC, and they filmed it at this point, so at the end of 2010, early 2011. It's a bit cheesy, but it just gives you a good snapshot of where I was at that point in my practice. And it's not very long. The sound, we might have to be a bit quiet because the sound is just coming out of the laptop, but it should be okay.
It's not coming out, Troy. It's weird.
There it is.
So I kind of consider myself doing fake taxidermy. starting with an anatomically correct base, I can use things like glass eyes and fake teeth and the colour. The works end up having a lot of personality in them. I grew up in Toowoomba. My family is not artistic at all, but my mum's supportive of what I do. I don't think she understands it, but she definitely feigns interest on the moment I told her that. Masquerading as life. In my work, there's an awkwardness and an idea that something has gone wrong. I've always had an interest in the materials that go into excessive decoration, excessive craft, fashion, sequins, beads, all those things. Anything that sparkles or is colourful has always interested me. I'd really like to one day do an intervention in a natural history museum. That's where artists are able to put their works in unlikely places. Having a Hong work with the real taxidermy, I think that would be a really interesting thing.
So, that was filmed just as I first moved to Melbourne, and I was working on a piece in that is up next. So I had a show at King's Ari, and I really wanted to work on large scale, life size. But it's always been life size animals, but big, because it's getting these forms. It's anything from small birds up to dinosaurs. They do kind of the big fiberglass T-Rexes and things. So this interest in kind of big cats and big scale. So this work was something I made for King's Ari, just as a first move to Melbourne. And it's kind of my first big work, I suppose, for life size. Something I've enjoyed working on. You'll see other pieces in this kind of scale. Soon after moving to Melbourne, I joined a gallery, Gould Galleries, and they showed me the last Melbourne Art Fair. So that was 2012, 2 years ago. And I was able to make these large works. There's a pair of them. And this idea of this cyclical colour pattern kind of crept into my work. It was often quite these random colours. But I really like this idea of these patterns that really don't have any end. So you can apply the same pattern to any animal form, and it will always kind of start, you can start and finish it in any colour, and it's always going to fit the animal. And this idea of fantasy and this work was called Time Travelers, but I just like this idea of kind of imagining these other worlds kind of that animals are from, this idea of kind of, it's almost like the last kind of scene from A Space Odyssey 2001, this idea of travelling, they're kind of materialising through space from another dimension almost, these kind of radiating colours that vibrate. This piece luckily was commissioned to make a copy and another edition to show for Hermes in Sydney, and it's coming down here soon, and then it'll be on Collins Street in their window. Not that work, but the same work again, I suppose. A second edition. And I started with exploring materials, and this is lurex fringing, lurex tassels, and gold. Gold is a really interesting colour, I think, in terms of working with animals and lion imagery and the kind of heraldry image of kind of public monuments and things like that. And it's also quite a tacky colour as well, associated with kind of kit decor. I like this idea of the disparity of the shifting values between fine art and kind of kitsch decorative items, and how it's so interchangeable with scale and things like that. Along those ideas, I applied to make a large golden work for McClelland. So McClelland is a biannual outdoor sculpture prize down on the Mornington Peninsula at the McClelland Gallery, and this is the work I made. But I can show you. It basically reveals how all my work is constructed. So it's a taxidermy. This is the taxidermy foam mannequin that needed the arms and the head attached, and then very much like with the tassels. This tinsel is they're called icicles. They're a Christmas decoration that you just put one on the tree, and it's like. But I had kilos and kilos of the stuff, and so I put it on with a gel glue. And it was installed outside. It took a bit of a beating from the sun and wind, but it made it. It's a long exhibition. It's outdoors for 8 months or so. And this is the final install shot from the catalogue. Kind of like a bunyip almost, but it's a polar bear to begin with. I think with my work, what I like about it is I can start with one animal, but the process is always going to shift, and it becomes almost another species through the covering of this new pelt. Then I had an exhibition with a gallery in Sydney, and I was looking more into wanting to work with having always been interested in kind of the diorama in the museum, the sort of the fake rocks and the other artificial elements that are part of exhibiting taxidermy. And so in a following exhibition we'll get to kind of started to track down the mounts that taxidermy is shown on, which is often kind of fake styrofoam rocks and things like that, and incorporating them into the work. There's other little bits and pieces from that I'm going to show. But these are the new pom-poms, my special commissioned pom-poms. When I ordered them, I had 300,000 pom-poms in several, about 32 boxes or so. So there's a lot of pom-poms to deal with. This show called Galleries, following that, is where I was able to work on a much larger scale, incorporating these. So this is if you can separate the two, it's a rock, especially a fake rock that mounts on the wall, especially moulded to fit a variety of big cat forms, and there's a few I was able to get. But they it becomes indistinguishable. So I've put it together and made the work all in the early morning session. And I tried one without the base. think in the future I'd be interested in kind of, rather than shop bought or pre-manufactured bases, I'd be interested to start trying more abstract objects. I think it's something I'm interested in, this idea of the pedestal as part of the work, and so integral to the animal form in terms of displaying taxidermy animals, dead animals. Tassels. The tassels, it's kind of making the tassels in conjunction with the pom-pom work, so it's interesting. I've gone on in later work to kind of make my own tassels. Maybe one day I'll make my own pom-poms too. But it's really the colours and the texture, this rayon. I really like the way it kind of sits on the work. It's this really silvery kind of tassel. It's a really unusual material to work with. It's interesting seeing them in the stories or on the video, how they're all in these big rings, and they're almost like an animal sitting on a ring. Just attracted to these strange materials from non-art sources, I suppose. And there's a full-scale Lurex lion, gold, and another rock, a different rock. And here's an install shot from that. So the ones with fake rocks, most of them get up on the wall. So this idea of the radiating colours and the cyclical patterns and the rainbow is something I took a series of drawings for that show, and I'm interested in kind of developing a 2D practice. So these drawings, we're looking at those patterns I've been using on the sculptures, and so these are they're large drawings, so they're about a metre with just little kind of 5mm circles that work in the same way as on the sculpture. So it's a pattern that really doesn't have a right or a wrong, a beginning or an end. And the next body of work was much more uniform. It was where I was able to make the set colours that I almost fallen into from the big custom pom-pom. So this work is the tassel, it's like acrylic yarn that I make. They're like long pom-poms. So they're hand-woven tassels that I turn into like meters and meters, and then that gets wrapped around the work and pinned into place to kind of deform the object. There's a bigger one there. It's interesting working with these acrylic yarn. It's something that it's something that I'm interested in doing on a bigger scale. I did that. I was able to take the pom-pom works to a larger scale, but I think I'm interested in this technique. It's kind of new in my practice. And there's the install shot. So it's very important, I suppose, working in suites of animals, and it's always tying back to that idea of the museum as a collection and as a display where you see different animals juxtaposed next to each other. So I often make works in pairs just to play off against each other. So sort of like two big cats or two small foxy kind of animals. And then most recently with Craft Victoria this year, where I was taking the drawing, these radiating circles and trying to see how that translates to with the sculpture. So I exhibited a couple of drawings within the same exhibition. And then most recently was I had a residency in Hill End in New South Wales, and just because of its remote location, I couldn't really work on sculpture there. So there's this idea of taking 2D work, but trying to keep this haberdashery aesthetic going. So I've started these series of embroideries, which I'm continuing here. You may have seen. Translating, I suppose you now see the relationship with the previous work coming through as a 2D. And this is something I've kind of needed to get established because I've got another residency early next year, where I'll be travelling and I won't be able to make a sculpture, but I needed to kind of establish, a tangent that would work travelling. So embroidery, it's more practical. I'm interested in the technique, but it's something just so I can continue to make work without the need for a large studio and things like that. And that brings me up to where I am today, working here on my second embroidery. So for questions about anything, we can go back to anything if you want.
How long did it take you to make your own tassels and then cover the big
It takes a long time. About maybe 5 days of winding the tassels. It's quite quick to kind of, once they're made, but weaving them, it's wrapping them, long strips of card, where they wrap, and you can sew it all together. So this one there's about a ball of yarn in every, say, 20 centimetres of tassel. And each kind of, there's a tassel, so each, say, inch or so is one strip. So there's hundreds of metres of yarn in one room.
So what's your next show?
I don't know. October next year, I think. That's the first official one.
And where's the next residency next year?
In Japan. Osaka, 3 months.
Oh, that's right.
So were you expecting any work to Japan?
No, it's not really it's just a research thing. But I like to be able to make work all the time, so hence trying to get I'm going to Japan to look at kigurumi, which are the mascot character costumes, and I think because there's a kind of relationship with my work, I think, because I do these fantasy elements, and so it's really just looking for new materials, new imagery. Is Japan. It's not really an exhibition opportunity.